Just a little bit of revision on where we are previously. Um, so we when you start the lesson, you open a command prompt and a browser and a text editor, Atom or whatever, um, and then you may need to change directory into where you're going to be working. In my case, it's projects. And you can do that with cd space the directory name. Now, if you don't know what's in the directory, you can type dir on Windows, and that will print out a list of directories that are inside the current directory. And you can see on the command prompt, this is a Mac one, but typically it will have some idea of where you are currently. If not, you can type print working directory, and that will, or pwd I should say, and that will print out where you're currently located. And then we can do a whatever we were coming to do. So in that case, we're actually going to start a new application from Rails, and we're going to make it a to-dos application because I'm getting really bored of the ideas applications. Once we do that, that'll go and do a whole heap of things. It basically puts down all of these nice files, and we'll get to exploring what each of these files does in later sessions. But for now, it just bootstraps an application for us, and then it goes and runs bundle install, which brings down a whole heap of libraries, and there you go. Once it's finished, I've got to get off to my session in a second. Once it's finished, you can then proceed to change directory, and the directory will be named whatever you made the application name, and you can actually change the application name later. It's a bit of a pain because it puts that to do or to dos all through the source code as well. Okay, so on Mac, I can actually cause it to open it in the text editor by going and typing atom space dot. I think I've explained this to a few of you before. The dot stands for the current directory. You can basically put the actual path in, which is alright, and it would open under that directory. But there's no point. Dot works perfectly well. And so that should, after a second, open the Atom text editor with the project showing. And there we go. Wasn't the fastest thing in the whole world. So if you're on Windows, you may have to open Atom directly, and then go to Open and browse down the directory structure until you find that project directory, and click Open instead. And that'll work. It's not as nice. Okay, so now that we're inside the application, we can have a look around at all of the things that it's generated. And there's a few of these things that you'll be fairly familiar with if going through the Rails Girls curriculum, but we'll sort of go through and discuss some of them again so that you can find your way around the project a little bit, because learning Rails, a lot of it is learning where to put things and how it all hangs together. It's not the simplest of systems. Okay, so the gem file is a very useful tool. So it basically allows you to specify external gems. Now, a gem is basically just a collection of functions and source code that has been contributed by somebody else. And a complex system like Rails is built on lots and lots and lots of them. But we can, and we will specify other gems in here that we want to install in the future. And if you've done the Rails girls, then you will have added stuff like carrier wave to here, and then run bundle and how to bring it all down. It actually describes exactly what it's going to install as far as versions in this gemfile.lock. You never edit this file. This file is just a representation of it going and resolving everything that it wants to install. So even though there was only a few here, you can actually see that there's many more down in here, because gems can rely on other gems, and so it brings down lots and lots of them. So yeah, that's your gem file for you. There's some other files in the root of the project. I'm not going to deal too much with them right now. I might come back to some of them later. I'm instead going to go into app and sort of talk through some of the things that are in here. We'll start on this session with controllers, because that's along with the routes, which I'll actually deal with a little bit now as well. They are the sort of the starting place, I guess, inside the application. Okay, so the controller is pretty much, and we haven't really got any controllers currently. So what I might do is I'll actually tell Rails to generate one. So this command, assuming I've remembered it correctly, because it could be really embarrassing in a second if I haven't remembered it correctly, will take a... so the generate command does lots of things. You can generate lots of different things, but the controller generator basically takes the name of the controller and then a name of an action, and I'll show you what that means in a second. You can put multiple actions after it, but I've only done the one. And when we generate a controller, it actually goes and does a few things. It puts it into the routes file, and then it generates a view, so some HTML code, puts down a test, puts down some CSS and some JavaScript files for us. CoffeeScript, which is put there, is easier way of writing JavaScript. It's probably more confusing for you than useful at this point, but that's what that .coffee stands for. It converts into JavaScript before the browser uses it. Okay, so now that we've actually got a controller to play with, you can see that it's actually it turned it from just the name into actually putting in the uppercase version of it into the class definition. I'll come back to classes in a later session and what they are. And it's also put in a method here called info, we specified on the command line. These are referred to in Rails speak as actions, because this is basically what it calls when somebody hits your page. So it goes to a controller and it goes to an action. Terminology can be a bit confusing, but what do you do? And then it updated the routes file, which is really the first place that it gets called when a request comes in. So you sit in a browser and type in the address, and this is where it goes first, right? And really, it's a resolved version of it, and we can go and have a look at exactly what it's resolved to by doing rake routes. And there's not a lot interesting there. It's got a little bit of information about the name of it, and this is a name that can be used internally, or the prefix to a name. So it auto generates some ability in here, assuming we had two, to do pages info URL, or which prints out a fully qualified URL, for instance, for use from another site coming back, which when you do like authentication or payment flows, it's really common to link off to, say, Facebook and have Facebook return back, so you need the fully qualified. And it also has pages info path. Okay, slightly off where I was looking to go. So the other thing that it does is the URI, the verb, sorry, and the verb is basically most basic get is a get request, which is basically what your browser does when you just type in the URL and hit enter. It goes and it gets the page. When doing forms and stuff like that, there'll be things like post, which is for putting new information to a server. The URI pattern is basically what it understands when you type like localhost colon 3000 /pages/info. It will pick that up now. Anything that Rails doesn't understand is going to get a 404 page. You can make it generate a 404 page even if it does understand it, but for our purposes, we won't be doing that for time being. And then the last thing is where it's going to send it when it receives it. So this is basically hooks it in and shoves it off to that for processing. And we can actually just go and run Rails server now, and then go back to our browser and go localhost 3000, and it will load up the default Rails page, which we've seen before. But then we can add in our path, and there we go. And it's returned some information, but we haven't actually looked at where that information comes from yet. So I'm not going to deal with it now, but it's actually been generated out of this file here. What I am going to do is actually put down a variable of name, and I'm just going to save that, and I'm going to go into this file and I'm going to change it slightly. Don't dwell too much on this, because I'm actually trying to point to something inside controllers and how it works, and I'll come back to exactly what this is doing a little bit later. Another session, because I'm running out of time. So Okay, so now when I reload the page, it should be different. So what we've got here is I've actually passed some information through from the controller. I've assigned it to a variable. Variables in Ruby and in Rails can take a few different forms. This one's called an instance variable, and it's important because of the scope of how it works. I don't want to get too deep into scope now, but it basically scope is how visible it is outside of where it was defined. So when we've added it here, if it was a local variable, which is just done like normal, as soon as we get past the end here, it's not visible anymore. And that's not very useful to us. What we want to do is when we call this method, we want it to be more visible than that. Rails is actually doing some magic with it, but you pretty much when you're in these Rails actions, you want it to be an instance variable. So we'll leave it at that for the time being. Now, in reality, we'd probably load something from the database, and we'll get to loading something from the database shortly. Another session because I got to go off to my click event, but and we might leave it there for the time being. I want you to like go through and generate a controller and see if you can't do what I did and expose it. You're going to need to use these tags here, and I'll explain in the next session really how that's working, and we might do a little bit more in the views so that you can have a little bit of a play with that. But for the time being, that's the start tag. This is whatever Ruby code that you want to run, and that's an end tag. So yeah, hopefully you can learn something new now.